Good day, wonderful people out there, and welcome to the Language Clinic today with your tutor, the Language Doctor. In the clinic today, what are we going to be looking at? We'll be looking at a very, very important topic. For today's class, we'll be looking at what I call units of grammar. So before we go into the topic itself, let's see the objective for today's class. So the objective for today's class is, at the end of this lesson, every learner should be able to, number one, say the unit of grammar or grammatical unit. Number two, define each unit of grammar or grammatical unit. We can say, number three, state the classification of each unit. Every unit has its own classes and group. So we should be able to say the class, every learner should be able to say the classification of each unit of grammar. Then number four, we have identify units of grammar in use. Whenever a sentence is given, we should be able to break them down into the different grammatical units and state the units of grammar that is used in that particular sentence. So having said that, now let's kick the ball rolling. So the first thing we need to look at is when a sentence is made. A good example of a sentence that we have here now: this little boy is my son. We have this little boy is my son as example, as we can have it, we have it here now. This little boy is my son. It's a sentence. But this sentence does not just come into being without the fusion of some other aspects. All these aspects that are put together is what we now refer to as what now? As the grammatical units that makes this particular sentence to be correct grammatically. What we can see here is, everybody will say, what we can see here is a whole sentence. Meaning, this little boy is my son is a whole sentence. But we can actually what now? Divide this. We can say, what does this alone stand for? What does this, the little boy, what does it stand for? We can also say, what does it stand for? We can have my son. What does it stand for? Then son alone can also stand on its own. So all these ones will bring us to what we call the grammatical unit. So in English language, unlike most other languages, in English language, there are 5 grammatical units. We have 5 grammatical units. So the 5 grammatical units are, number one, we have the morpheme, we have the word, we have the group, or we call it phrase. Systemic grammarians call it group. While the traditional grammarian, they call it phrase. So it's either we call it group or we say phrase. Then the fourth one, we have clause. Then the fifth, which is the largest among them, we have what now? The sentence. All these are the grammatical units that we have in the English language. So if you are asked to actually explain the first one, which is our first objective, we want to be able to name or state the grammatical unit. So for us together, we simply say what? The grammatical unit in English language are what now? The morpheme, the word, the group or phrase, the clause, and lastly, the sentence. Now let's begin to look at them one after the other. I will just take some examples of each one of them, give a brief definition. Then in our subsequent class, we are going to be taking each of them as a topic on its own to be dealt with. So the first one that I have here is the morpheme. If you're asking, what do we call the morpheme? Just as I said at the beginning of the class, what is the morpheme? So we can simply say, the morpheme that we have here, we say a morpheme has something in common that makes it, that distinguishes it from here. We say a morpheme is the smallest. Look at this. Is the smallest. You can see among them in a hierarchical order, the morpheme is the smallest indivisible. Smallest indivisible and meaningful units of grammar. Meaning what we can simply refer to as the morpheme. We say the morpheme is the smallest indivisible and meaningful unit of any grammar. So whenever we talk about any grammar, we begin to look at it is the what now? The smallest indivisible unit. So we refer to it as what now? As the morpheme. So a good examples of morphemes, we can say morpheme simply means a morpheme can stand on its own sometimes, and a morpheme has to depend on another morpheme to make a whole word. So we have one, the smallest, like IL, it's a morpheme. AN, it's a morpheme. Less, it's a morpheme. Then we can also have BI, it's a morpheme. We can also have pro, it's a morpheme, etc. So we have some morpheme can come at the beginning or at the end of a given word. So all these ones, you'll find out that we have the ones that can stand on its own and the ones that cannot stand on their own. They are all referred to as morphemes. So morphemes generally are part of a word. So when we have combination of one or more morphemes, we are going to have the second grammatical unit. So from here now, we can have those morphemes that are free morpheme. This one can stand on its own and function as a word. Then we have this one can stand on its own and function as a word, but this one cannot stand on its own, but it has meaning. Whenever we use it, we know it makes negative, opposite. Then this one cannot stand on its own. This one cannot stand on its own. So all this one, we refer to them as bound morpheme. Why this one is a what now? It's a free morpheme. So that's that about morpheme. Then we move to the second one, which is the word. We have the word. The word simply means morpheme. We have M for morpheme plus another morpheme is going to give us what now? Word. Meaning that we can have one or more morphemes together to give us a word. A good example, let me give you one. I have child. Child is a morpheme because we can no longer break it. Then if I have plus less, it becomes what? Childless. This is a word, but this one is a morpheme on its own, and this is equally what? A morpheme on its own. Meaning that what now? Child is a morpheme, less is a morpheme. Invaluable. Invaluable. See, let's see what we have here. This is one morpheme in. This is another morpheme value. And this is another morpheme able. So the three of them are combining to give us a word. Meaning, what we refer to as a word is one or more morphemes. When we have one or more morphemes, we refer to it as what now? As word. Just as I have explained that one, for us to have number 3, the third one, for me to have the third one, which is the group, the group, the group. The group simply means when I have one word or I have more words, it is going to give me group or phrase. So each time I'm having one word or I'm having more words put together that express meaning, the meaning will be incomplete, but it will express meaning. So that is what we need to correct. Some people will say a phrase is a group of words. It is wrong to say that. A phrase in most cases doesn't have to be a group of words. A single word can be a phrase. So then they will now say what now? Which does not have meaning. It is wrong. A phrase must always have a meaning, but the meaning in it is always incomplete. Let me give you a good example. This is what we call a phrase. If I say man, man is a word, and at the same time it's a phrase, because I can simply say what now? Man needs food. So man is a word on its own. Then I can have what now? The man. Now I'm having two now. So the man is also a what now? A phrase, and it is having two words here now. Then I can also have the young man. The young man is also another phrase. So I'm having three words now. I can have what now? The young man in that room. The whole of this is also another phrase. Then I'm having how many words here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm having 6 words. In some cases, I can just have this. In that room is a phrase on its own. The young man is a phrase on its own. But in this kind of arrangement where I have everything together, I can simply say what now? The young man in that room is a what? A phrase. So what we call a phrase, it can be a single word and it can be what now? Two or more words that are meaning. It is not always senseless. It makes sense, but the sense in it is incomplete. Why do we say it is incomplete? If I come into your room now and say something like this, the young man, you won't run away. You will simply ask me a question. What is the question? What about the young man? What happened to a young man? Then I will explain. If it doesn't have meaning, if it doesn't make any sense to you, you won't ask me a question. So it is different from when somebody runs into a madman and the madman says, will you ask a question? You run away. You won't ask a question because does not make any sense. So a phrase makes sense but does not make a complete sense. Now, by now, we should be able to guess the definition of the second one. So before I go to that, then for this phrase now, we have different types of phrases. I forgot to tell you, for words too, we have different types of words. From words, we can simply say, I gave you examples of words, how they are formed, but what are the different types of words? In one of my classes, I told you about VIP Napaka. I said, what does VIP Napaka stands for? So this one is the classification of all words in the English language. So all the words in the English language are grouped. So we have them into a particular class. We have verb, interjection, pronoun, noun, adjective, preposition, adverb, conjunction, and article. All these 9 are classes of words. So we can call them classification of words. Then under phrase now, we also have classification of phrase. So for phrase now, we can have adjective phrase, a phrase that behaves like an adjective. Noun or nominal phrase, a phrase that behaves like a noun. Then we can have adverbial phrase, a phrase that functions as an adverb. We can have prepositional phrase, a phrase that functions as a preposition. So we can name it. So the type of phrase will be named after the function it performs. So those one are types of phrases there. Then and I move to clause. A clause simply means combination of one or more phrases. Combination of one or more groups is going to give us a clause that makes complete or incomplete sense. The fact that there is a clause does not mean it must make a complete sense. Sometimes a clause can make a complete sense. Sometimes a clause can make an incomplete sense. Let me explain. Now, when we say a clause, we say a single word can be a clause. If I say go, I just told somebody, go. Go is just one word, and at the same time, it's a phrase. At the same time, it's also a what now? It's also a clause, because once I say go with demonstration, the person to whom I'm speaking will simply do what I want him or her to do. So that tells us that what now? Go is a what now? Is a complete clause on its own. This one can stand alone. Stand alone. So it has a name we call it now. We can call it what? A main clause. Some people call it main clause. Some people call it independent clause. Clause that does not depend. So I can also have something like this now. See the bird. See the bird. See the bird. See the bird. So I have 3 words there. But this is also a what? A main or an independent clause. So that's one type of clause. At the same time, these ones will make a complete sense. Then at the same time, I can have a clause that will also make sense, but it will not make a complete sense. Somebody say, why coming to school this morning? Now, somebody said, why coming to school this morning? If somebody enters the classroom and say, why coming to school this morning? We will all listen and we will expect the person to continue. If the person says that and leaves the class, we will begin to wonder, is everything right with this person? Because it is incomplete, yet it's a clause. So, why coming to school this morning simply tells us it's a clause on its own, but it is lacking that particular sense in it, completeness of sense in it. because it has another part that has not been added. So let's assume somebody now say, I saw my old friend. I saw my old friend. It's a clause on its own. It can stand. So we call it main. This one, why coming to school this morning, cannot stand on its own. We call it subordinate. We can call it subordinate clause. Sorry for my marker. We call it subordinate clause. We can call it subordinate clause. Or we call it dependent clause. Dependent clause. Clause that depends. So from what I've just told you now, we simply say a clause can make is a word or group of words or group of phrases that make complete or incomplete sense. But what makes a clause different from a phrase is just one thing. Something that makes a clause different from a phrase is the presence of a verb. If you check now, for each of these examples that I've given here, there are verbs in all the examples. Each of them has a verb. The first one, go, is the verb there, and that's the only one. See is the verb there. Then we have what now? Coming is the verb there. So we have saw is the verb there. So each of them has a verb in it before we can refer to them as what now? As a clause. But the only thing that differentiates a dependent from independent is, can the verb stand alone? Like in see can stand alone. That's what makes it me. Go can stand alone. It makes it. But coming cannot stand on its own, except we add it to saw here. And that is why to make a complete sentence, we say, I saw my old friend while coming to school this morning. That is when it now make a complete sense. So we've mentioned 4. Then the 5th one is the largest. So if you are asked to define the largest, we simply say what now? The sentence is the largest grammatical unit. Sentence is the largest grammatical unit. Do you know why the sentence is the largest grammatical unit? It's because in one sentence, you will find all other units. In one sentence, we will find all other units. A good example, I can simply tell you that I can define a sentence in so many ways. I can say one way is what? I can say a sentence is the arrangement of morphemes. Meaning that what now? One or more morphemes can give me a sentence. A good example, look is a morpheme. But if I have something like this now, I say, look, telling somebody to see something, then this look alone is a sentence on its own. At the same time, this look is a word on its own. At the same time, this look is a phrase on its own. It is called a verb phrase or a verbal phrase on its own. Then this same look is a clause on its own, a main clause for that matter. Then at the same time, it's a sentence. So let me go back to the first examples I have here now. I have the children are playing in the garden. The children are playing in the garden. I'm going to use this to explain everything I've said so far. The children are playing in the garden is sentence. It's a sentence. So it gives us the completeness. So there is nothing we are looking for again. It is complete. The children are playing in the garden. It's complete. So this is a good example of a sentence. We are not going to classification of sentences now. So on types and others. So we just want to limit it here. So we have the first one. Then from here, we can begin to get other ones that we've seen. There is a morpheme. From here, children, two things are blended. Two things are blended. What are the two things? Child and ren, to give us children. So child is one morpheme, ren is another morpheme. Then we have one morpheme. Two things are blended here. There are two morphemes here. We have play and ing. So play is one morpheme. In, which is ing, that changes it into a continuous form, is another morpheme. In is another morpheme. The is another morpheme. Garden is one morpheme because we cannot break it. So from here now, how many morphemes do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So from this same sentence, we have 9 morphemes. 9 morphemes from this sentence. Then let's move on. I hope you are following. So let's move on. Then after morpheme now, we have words. So from here now, how many words have you got? We've got that there is 1 word, children 2, are 3, playing 4, in 5, 6, and 7. So from here we have got 7 words. Then we want to move to phrases. How many phrases do we have here? Guys, don't get tired. So how many phrases do we have here now? So we simply look at what can stand on its own when we mention this. So we can simply say what? Number 1 phrase is what? Who are playing in the garden? We simply say the children. This is 1 phrase on its own. Then we can have what? The children is 1 phrase. Then what are the children doing? We say what? Are playing. It's another phrase on its own. Then we can say, where are the children playing? We have what? In the garden. So from here now, how many phrases do we have? We have 3 phrases. The children are playing. Then we have in the garden. So 3 phrases from here. Then let's move on. We have clause. Clause. What determines a clause? The number of verbs that we have determines a clause. So from here now, the children are playing in the garden. How many clauses do we have? We only have 1 clause because the only verb we have here is what now? Are playing. So we have 1 clause. Then lastly, we have just a single sentence. From here, it makes just 1 sentence. We have the children are playing in the garden. Just 1 sentence from here. So we have 1 sentence. So we can see from the example I've given on the board, we have 9 morphemes, 7 words, 3 phrases, 1 clause, and 1 sentence. So you can also do this at home, and you will be able to differentiate or be able to classify on your own the different grammatical units and identify them in a sentence. So thank you for being there, and thanks for watching. Remain blessed.